Welcome back to Trash to Treasure. On this episode, we're going to be cutting down all of our black cards down to something a little bit more reasonable like we have in blue. This will still give us enough wiggle room to play with archetypes as we go through the last two colors, but also give us something more manageable and something we can handle with our heads. Banehound is a French vanilla creature. I'm pretty happy to have, especially if lifelink is going to matter. It's on the weaker end of creatures I'd like to keep, though. Battlefly Swarm is something I like a lot less than Banehound. It does have the ability to get Death Touch, which can be a really big surprise. However, it's also just a 1-mana 1/1. Let's continue through the list and see what we want to cut down. Clay Revenant. This is the first of the recursive creatures that we're going to look at. We want to have at least one that can continually be sacrificed for value using any of our aristocrat enablers. I would much rather the creature go right back to the battlefield. Diagraph Ghoul. This is the first card I'm happy to see. It's a 1-mana 2/2. When I build cubes that are a little bit more creature-centric, I like to have black as the tertiary color of aggressive decks. Can't do that without bodies. Dreadmalkin. This is the first aristocrat enabler I have, but it does cost quite a bit. That said, it can also become its own threat in its own right. I think I like this 1/1 more than I like Battlefly Swarm. So this card is really on the bubble. It's fighting for its life right now. Ecstatic Awakener fills a very similar role to Dreadmalkin. Of the two, I'm going to keep the Dreadmalkin. So we're going to cut the Ecstatic Awakener. Eye Collector. It's a fairy, which, even though we're not doing a typal cube, could end up mattering with a few of the spells we'll see later on. And it helps support this idea that there's a mill deck being built in the format. So we're going to cut the bug to make room for it. Grim Physician. This is just a classic effect. Helps kill a thing when it dies. You are going to want to have cards that like to die. I just don't think this is it. Haunt of the Dead Marshes. This is another one of those types of cards that can come back from the grave and you're happy to sacrifice. I think what I'm going to do here is we're going to leave this in, only until we can see how many legendary cards we could potentially be getting. Nested Shambler. See, this is much more of what I'm looking for when I want a creature to die. Grim Physician has the potential, but not possibility, of killing something, but I think I'd rather have a body that gives you a body. The bodies that can be sacrificed. So we're going to cut the Grim Physician. Persistent Specimen. This is kind of exactly what I wanted the Revenant to do. It does cost 3 mana, but it comes right back from the grave. This is going to be a slam dunk. So we're going to remove the Revenant. Serrated Scorpion. This is another creature that loves to die. It has a great death trigger, which can help drain your opponent, and assuming you're able to bring it back, can just do that again. And then finally, the Viscera Seer. This is one of the few ways to have a free sacrifice in the cube. And this is going to be one of the better ways. So that's in. I think this is a good starting point, and we can kind of whittle it down later when we know more about what the cube is doing. And we're starting with Barrow Naughty. It's an okay body. It gives you a payoff if you have fairies, but we're not going to bank on that. Black Knight. I was on the fence about adding this to the cube list because I already knew that we cut the white one. I think Protection is just too powerful. We have enough 2-drops to make the environment work. Blight Pile. This is probably the best of the Defender payoffs. It attacks your opponent's life total directly, and it's a 2-mana 3/3. This is kind of the linchpin of the entire format. If the Blight Pile comes out, every other defender that we've previously selected is also going to come with it. Bloodthrone Vampire. This is another free sacrifice outlet. We'll take a look at it for now, but if we can find something better in 2 or 3, it's probably going to get cut. Cabal Initiate. This is our free discard outlet that's going to help enable any Madness deck we're trying to build. The Threshold ability is not nothing. It's just nice to have a card that will give us the discards for free so we can use our mana to do the Madness thing. Clattering Augur is another one of those cards that comes back from the grave. I can't say I'm in love with it though. It costs 4 mana to bring it back to your hand and another 2 to play. We're going to cut this. It doesn't do enough. Corrupt Court Official. I was happy to see this after pulling the Ravenous Rats. They both do the same function, but this is a human advisor, which is slightly better than a generic rat. So we're going to pull the Ravenous Rats out because we don't really want to double up on this effect. Dusk Legion Zealot. It's a vampire that gives you a card on ETB. Super happy to see this. Gixian Infiltrator. This is one of those few sacrifice payoffs that we're going to find in the environment at all. I don't know if giving itself a buff is the most valuable effect to have, but we'll give it a shot. Golem, Patient Plotter. In the last episode, I asked you guys if you would have the ring in your environment. I'm still on the fence myself. It adds so much complexity for just a little bit of a payoff. I'm going to keep Golem in here for now because it's a very aggressively statted body. However, if we decide to take the ring out, this is an easy cut. Lazotep Reaver is just a body that comes with a body. Let's cut it. Malevolent Noble. This is another sacrifice outlet, but this time it's not free. So let's take a minute right now to balance this one versus the Bloodthrone Vampire. The Bloodthrone Vampire is naturally smaller at a 1/1 and gives itself a temporary buff. The Noble starts off as a better creature and also gets the buff permanently. However, it does cost mana. I think in this environment, value is going to win out over tempo. So let's keep the Malevolent Noble. I'm going to cut the Vampire. Order of Midnight. This is probably the best Gravedigger they've ever printed. You can get a 2-mana 2/2 evasive body just for 2 mana. But if you want to invest into getting a card back from your grave first, it's going to cost 2 and 2 black. Ragged Recluse. This is going to be another card that's going to signal an archetype we may or may not be including. So I'm going to leave it in for now. Reassembling Skeleton. This is probably my second favorite recursive threat we've seen so far, so we'll keep it. Sangrophage. As I alluded to earlier, I really like having black as an aggressive color. A 2-mana 3/3 will do that for you. Sure, it's going to cost you life, but if you're the aggressive deck, your life doesn't matter. Sinister Starfish was mostly added in because of my fondness for it when I was playing MH2. It's not going to do enough. It's gone. Smitten Swordmaster. When I was breaking this card out, I said that I liked it because it was a knight payoff and synergy piece all in one. I don't think black has the density for knights, but we'll keep it for now, and we'll see if knights becomes a theme across the entire cube. Vermin Gorger is another sacrifice that's not free. You do have the 2-mana 2/2 body. It is also a vampire. You can do it once a turn, but it does cost nothing. I do like it more than the Malevolent Noble, but they're in a very similar bucket right now, so we'll hold on to it. And then Withered Wretch I added in because it was the original Scavenging Ooze. I don't know that we need the Graveyard Hate. I'm going to leave it in, but this has a high likelihood of being cut. Okay, on to the 3s. Starting with Belle of the Brawl. See, this is exactly what I was talking about. This is a pretty decently aggressively statted card. It just happens to have a knight payoff attached to it. But even a 3-mana 3/2 menace I'm kind of happy with. Bone Shredder. This is a bad kill spell. We'll remove it. Crow of Dark Tidings. I liked the ability of the self-mill to get payoffs into the graveyard, but I think a 3-mana 2/1 is just too poor. Deep Cavern Imp. This is a better version of the last couple of cards. Aggressive, evasive, and comes with built-in madness synergy. Slam dunk for this cube. Gibbering Barricade. Another card that's signaling the wall archetype. This will give you an aristocrat payoff, but it does cost quite a lot of mana to go. Again, I don't love this card, and the second we pull the walls out, it's coming with it. Guiltblade Prowler. It's a value piece for a tempo archetype. I don't think any Madness deck would be happy to run a 3-mana 2/3.
We're going to have to cut this.
Grima Wormtongue. There are a lot of words that matter on this card, and it's up to you to decide if all those words together make for value. A 3-mana 1/4 isn't great. I'm going to keep it in, at least for now. It may be that all of those words don't do enough, but for right now, I think it's a pretty decent mix of everything we want to do. Liliana's Elite is your big body. I don't know if vanilla creatures are good enough, no matter how big they are. Nezumi Blade Blesser might just be the better version of Belle of the Brawl. At least one of these two conditions will be active. I think we're going to keep it in just for now. I'm going to think hard about Belle of the Brawl, and if Belle stays in, this will come out. Otherwise, this will be the one that wins. Phylactery Lich is probably the safest of all of our 3-drops. It's black, 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 sure, but it gives you such a really cool thing to aspire to do that I can't see cutting this.
Sadistic Sky Marcher. It's a pretty decent French vanilla creature at 3. If you don't have the synergy, it's a lot worse at 4. We'll have to see what vampires Red will be bringing to the table. Also, we've got this Forerunner of the Legion that would play well in the same deck. Let's give this a shot and test it out and see if we've got the density of vampires to make it happen.
Do I like it more than Deep Cavern Imp because they're playing in a very similar space? We're going to assume that this is online when you're casting it. We'll keep this too. As we kind of learn more about what this cube wants, we'll have a more solid idea of what to cut. Tizarus's Charger is just a really good body. I don't know that there's any black deck that's going to want that. Undercity Scrounger is another one of those things that just doesn't make sense in a cube environment. It's a 3-mana 1/4. That's just way too slow. Unforgiving One. This card's interesting because it already has an evasion, plus it can bring things back from your grave. I really like that, especially considering equipment is probably going to be a fairly major theme across the entire cube. We'll leave that in for now. And then Vampire Aristocrat. Here's a very similar card to the 1 and 2 that I did cut. I hate to keep saying the same message, but this is going to be one of those things where it's going to be either Grima Wormtongue or Vampire Aristocrat, but I can't make that decision yet. We don't have enough information about what the cube has in general. Alright, now we're on to the 4s, 5s, and mores. Like with white and blue, we're only going to want a few, maybe 2 or 3 4s, and then maybe 1 or 2 5s, and then 1 of all of these 6s. Let's make some cuts and make the number way more reasonable. A Beta Ghoul? No. Bellowing Saddle Brute is just a vanilla card? No, we want things to have an impact. Okay, see, Hellmongrel here is exactly what I'm talking about for impact. Hellmongrel is one of those cards because it's not only a discard synergy piece, but it's also a payoff if you happen to discard this. I'm going to keep this in for now. Oh, but it's fighting for the same space as Kitchen Imp, and I think I love Kitchen Imp more. Both will stay for now, but it's going to be one of these two that win. Necromancer's Familiar. This is a card that I adore in my Modern Horizons cubelet. We'll talk about that some other day. I think this beats Hellmongrel, even though Hellmongrel has the Madness ability, because it gives you the discard outlet and also a good reason to want to discard in the first place. So Hellmongrel is gone. Pharika Spawn, on first face, seems like a good body, but the fact that its escape is 6 mana is an easy cut. Venomous Hierophant doesn't do enough, so we'll remove that from the cube. And then Whisper Blood Liturgist is kind of exactly what we want. It lets you sacrifice 2 creatures for free, once per turn. It brings something back from the yard, and it's a legendary creature. We'll keep that. High Fae Negotiator seems like a good 5-drop. It's a fairy, it has a bargain ability, which might matter, and it's got evasion. Let's see what else 5 is giving us. Loathsome Curator. This is kind of playing in the same space as the High Fae Negotiator. It's just a big, evasive body. This one's bigger. This one's more evasive. I think we're going to cut this. Revenant is just a big, evasive body. It is one of the more classic cards you would even see in this environment, kind of akin to a Serra Angel in that regard, but it plays in the same space as Sengir Connoisseur. I think I like the Connoisseur better. Even though Revenant is probably stronger vanilla overall, I like having the Sengir Connoisseur better. Goodbye Revenant, and then Scourge Familiar. Another discard payoff, and it gives you black mana. Okay, so we're going to cut the High Fate Negotiator too. We only want to have a couple of 5-drops, and I think the Scourge Familiar and the Sengir Connoisseur are easy additions to the cube. Dreadhound. This is your Blood Artist type effect. Blood Artist is good because it's 2 mana. 6 is too many. Topaz Dragon is a bad body with a bad spell. I did talk about this before, but I do like Twisted Abomination. It gives you a body you can cycle into the grave that you could potentially bring back. Plus, it has Regenerate, which is confusing, but it might matter. At least it has the reminder text on the card. We'll keep it, which means Underworld Hermit, you're gone too. Archfiend of Sorrows is an easy win because it has that board wipe ability. 7 mana is a ton for any environment, especially this one. But I think, given the options to get this into the graveyard and potentially cast it for 5, I'm going to keep it. Again, 7 mana is a ton, so we're kind of getting rid of everything with 7. But Writhing Necromass has a benefit that the others don't, in that it gets cheaper. Is a 4 mana 5/5 Death Touch worth it? You're going to have to make that call, but for this cube, I say no. I really want my cards to be more than just stats. I want them to be building to a theme. You want to have your drafters really excited to build a deck that does a thing. Now we're on to Instants and Sorceries. Very much in the same vein as the other 2 colors, the Instants and Sorceries we're looking for are your support cards. You want them to do things that help your deck to do the thing it wants to do, while also giving you the ability to deal with what your opponent is doing. When it comes to black, what we're looking for are kill spells, discard spells, and possibly some reanimate spells. Cling to Dust. I think in a world where we want Grave Hate in black, I would rather have Cling to Dust than the Zombie Cleric. So we're going to go back to the Withered Wretch and remove it. The Withered Wretch can remove multiple cards from a graveyard, and if the cube was more graveyard focused, this would be the keep. But considering that the problematic card may only be 1 or 2 of them, we're going to pull this out and give ourselves a little bit more value with the ability to gain some life or draw a card.
Golem's Bite. As long as the ring stays in, this is a win. Kills a small guy and gets you some extra value out of the yard.
These 4 mana instants all do the same exact thing with their own personal twist. Bake into a Pie destroys a creature and makes a food token. Bleed Dry destroys a creature and exiles it. Taken by Nightmare exiles a creature, and if you have an enchantment, Scries, and Tendrils of Corruption kills a creature, and it lets you gain some life. I'm going to keep Bake into the Pie because it gives you a token, which can then gain you life. And I'm going to keep Taken by Nightmares because it's an exile effect that has a potential upside. Bone Shards. Another one of those kind of best in show. Ego Drain's an interesting one. This could be better than the Thoughtseize. We're going to keep this for now because even if you have to get rid of a card out of your hand to get rid of your opponent's best card, I'm still pretty happy with that. Arterial Flow. Mind Rot with upside. Dread Return. This might have been one of the largest surprises in the entire box. To have the ability to bring something back to the grave for potentially free is nuts. We talked about this a little bit during the card discovery phase, but Geese's Bidding and Moan of the Unhallowed are fighting for the same exact slot. Now we're on to artifacts and enchantments. Transmogrant Altar is a bad Ashnod's Altar, but it's not terrible. I don't love that the effect taps, but I think just having this effect as an artifact in general, I'm pretty happy with. Hopeless Nightmare. This was another cool surprise to see. Has that little bit of black burn and gives you a discard. I'm going to keep it. Tribute to Urborg. Playing in the very similar space to what we just discussed. I think we're going to take that over Tragic Fall. So that's going to conclude the black section. We have removed 46 cards. So that's going to finish the black section, at least for now. We were able to remove 46 cards off the top, leaving us with a list left of 71. That's even better than I had hoped. So it looks like we're getting a little bit more efficient. There are still far too many creatures in all of these colors. I'm a little bit happier with the spells. That'll finish the episode for the day. Thank you for joining me. Next episode, we're going to be discovering what Red has in store. It's been a few weeks for me, but I think I remember Red feeling particularly strong, so I'm very excited to get to that episode. Let me know in the comments below, would you play with the ring mechanic? Thank you for watching. Have a great day.